Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this, what will inevitably be a very brief live stream because I'm en route to Monaco, slight delay, so I thought I'm in a hotel, as you can see, in Madrid. Quite a nice day here, actually. And I thought I'd just have a very quick chat about current events. We won't have much time, as I say, so, and apologies for the short notice as well. A big thank you to my partners on the channel here, to Jetcraft, the biggest buyers and sellers of executive jets around the world. Wheels Up, Jetstream, whatever, they've got it. And what a great company they are. And also to Pitbox IO, the great Australian software, which enables you, if you have a race team at whatever level, to put all your data together so that you can start winning races. Assuming you're not doing that already. If you are, to continue to win races. Anyway, let's get on with it because lots to talk about going into Monaco. Just want to make sure that I had a last minute drama, so I'm slightly breathless because I suddenly realized I had no juice in the computer. And in order to get the plug in with the Spanish adapter, I had to move the camera position, which I just sorted out. So usual things, whatever. But I hope everyone can hear me okay and see me. And well, I don't know if you want to see me, but you can probably hear me. But yeah, the big announcement on Wednesday. Incredible timing, really. I mean, Honda, classic Honda, they put out this press release, an email inviting the media to a Zoom conference call, which turned out to be 3 o'clock in the morning, Central European time, 2 a.m. UK time. But perfect for Japan, of course, and not bad, I guess, for the west coast of America either. Announcing what we kind of had been talking about a lot on this live stream and everywhere else in motorsport as well, about how Aston Martin, rather than remaining Mercedes customer team, will become in effect the Honda factory team from 2026 onwards. That's the key thing, 2026. So obviously there was a lot of talk, and there will be a lot of talk about Fernando Alonso's relationship with Honda and how he dissed Honda quite severely in his McLaren Honda days, his second reincarnation at McLaren. And there was a time when Honda just didn't want to know about him, and that showed through when he went to IndyCar, and they didn't want to provide engines to a team that Fernando wanted to drive for. So that's an ongoing thing. But obviously 2026 is quite a long time away, and how old Fernando? I think he'll be 44 in 26, which is no bad thing. Bear in mind, Jack Brabham was 44 in 1970 when he took the World Championship to Jochen Rindt. And it was only a couple of very unfortunate retirements, and obviously that incident at Monaco when he came up to lap Piers Courage on the last corner, and there was a bit of oil, and Piers didn't really make it very clear where Jack was supposed to go, and Jack just locked up and went off into the straw bales on the outside, allowing Jochen Rindt to win. Admittedly, he was under pressure from Jochen at the time. But if none of that had happened, Jack would have been world champion in 1970 at the age of 44. So don't write Fernando Alonso off. He's super fit, super keen, super motivated. And Honda made a point of saying that they don't hold anything that happened in the past against Fernando. So this is the new Fernando Alonso, isn't it? This is the new Fernando that is, I love Honda. Yeah, those days are over. And Lance Stroll, let me do what I can to help my teammate. He's wonderful and he's got so much potential, and his dad's brilliant and he's paying for it all, and yeah, let's make it happen. So that's Fernando, and he's got a very good chance, of course, of winning the Monaco Grand Prix this weekend. Imagine if that happened. Wouldn't that be good? Well, it'd be good for all the Fernando fans and for, well, I think for Formula One in general, actually. So yeah, do not write Fernando Alonso off. But it is interesting, isn't it, that he's back with Honda again, well, potentially back with Honda. Who knows what role he'll be playing then. He may be in some sort of ambassadorial role, which would be even more of a drama, wouldn't it? Fernando, ambassador for Honda, anyway. And the other thought that I had was Zak Brown, actually, because here's Zak taking over McLaren, and kind of the first thing he does is get rid of Honda and become a Mercedes factory team. And I can remember him after the Australian Grand Prix in his first few months of running the team, sort of chuckling and snorting at the performance of the Honda-powered, I guess they were Toro Rossos then. And yeah, didn't the Honda engines do well? And they were rubbish. And, and look at it now. What what an irony that is. Here's McLaren, who had Honda, getting rid of Honda, trashing Honda indeed, and spending whatever it was, 23 million to become a Mercedes customer team. And here's Aston Martin blowing away McLaren with the Mercedes engine, now doing a huge announcement, signing up with Honda. Zak Brown, please advise. I mean, right now, I mean, you'd have to wonder if Honda had come back to Zak and said, as they did to Fernando, I guess, forget about the past. We think you're brilliant. McLaren are the team of the future. We'd love to be your works engine supplier from 2026 onwards. Would Zak have said, no, forget it, as he did, a few years ago? How things change and how short-sighted a lot of people are. I said at the time that I thought it was a massive mistake for McLaren to leave Honda. All they needed to do was rejig the way in which McLaren worked with Honda. In other words, not allow them to just do their own thing in Japan, but get sort of control of the program, let the technology, the brilliant technology of Honda, breathe and be creative, but at the same time structure it and manage it in a Formula One-esque way, which is exactly what Red Bull have done in Milton Keynes. And that's all McLaren needed to do. It wasn't difficult. That was the lesson learned from the whole Williams-McLaren thing back in 1987 to 1988, 89. And they didn't do that. They just got rid of Honda, which I always thought was a massive mistake. And I think now they probably think so too. But we'll have to see what the jury says about that as time goes on, of course. So, my thoughts are, very good for Aston. New factory, new facilities, and a way of integrating Honda into that new facility at Silverstone. That is absolutely key in my view. Still, even though this is a very different Formula One and 2026 is 50% electrification, which Honda will do very well, I think. Even though the technical challenge is completely different, the philosophical, sociological issue is still there, which is let's integrate Honda into the running of the race team, which is a uniquely Formula One-esque thing, and let's not leave it to the different time zone in Japan and leave it to Honda to provide us with a product. Let's get on top of that product. And I don't know whether that will happen. I suspect it will because of good racers like Tom McCullough there, people with real feel for the racing business. I suspect it will happen. Andy Green, will he be as much in control? Probably not. I mean, where he's going to be, probably not. Probably some sort of Aston Martin Honda road car project, who knows. But otherwise, I think a lot of Red Bull guys there who know how Red Bull put the Honda deal together, and it will work very well, I think. That Aston Honda tyre will work extremely well. So, McLaren, please advise, I think, is my real summation from all of that. So, as I say, this is a very, very brief live stream. And I think it's okay just to do these sort of live streams when I get a chance. I hope people understand that I'm kind of pressed for time to some extent. We've got some questions coming in. Thank you so much indeed. Let's get on with those. Radu Andrei Marinescu. Hi, Peter. Greetings from Romania. Great country, Romania. Love it. Invented the jet engine and apart from anything else, lots of other stuff. Dacia. Excellent channel with excellent content as always. What's your take on the new Merc upgrades? What Toto will say if they fail? Lewis to Ferrari, hot or not? Thanks. What Toto will say is, performance window, need to expand it. I suspect. I think they'll go somewhere towards getting the problem solved. I just can't believe they won't have, the penny won't have dropped by now. And I put that video out last week. They put out a whole lot of stuff about how an upgrade finds its way to the track, which is all pretty perfunctory stuff, machine shop, carbon shop, all this stuff. We all know. They never actually said, what the upgrade is and how hard we've been working and why we made all these mistakes in the past. But I did put out the section with the two members of the aerodynamics team, which I thought was quite interesting because it just gives a feel for the people in the management of the aerodynamics side now. Obviously, they're not decision makers, but it gave a little bit of a feel for what that team's all about. And very good too, very good, professional people, no doubt about that. And as I say, it's hard to believe they won't have got on top of it now. I think one thing that's been talked about a lot is the correlation issues Mercedes may or may not have had between CFD model making and the wind tunnel. I've always been quite skeptical of that whole correlation thing. It's kind of a sort of an easy word to say to explain why your car's not very quick. It's a bit like a new star team principal arriving at a team and saying, oh, there's so much wrong here, it's going to take me 3 years to get it right, don't expect stuff overnight, give me a bit of time. And it's a little bit the same, correlation. To me, it's more about asking the right questions of the CFD, of the wind tunnel, and then getting the answers to the correct questions. As Ron Dennis always used to say, you'd ask him a question, you'd say, well, that's the wrong question, but here's the answer to a different question that you should have asked. Classic Ron. And it's a bit like that with the wind tunnel, I think, with Aero. You've got to ask the right questions. And if you're not predicting and you're not reading all the standard works out there, predicting that there'll be massive porpoising with the new ground effect rules, and you're not doing that research, you're going to be asking the wrong questions of the wind tunnel and of CFD, for sure. But as I say, I think Mercedes by now must be running somewhere near correct in terms of their thinking and asking the right questions. So I think Mercedes probably will have quite a good weekend at Monaco because they've got two very quick drivers for a start, which is hugely important at Monaco. And secondly, they're a good race team on the ground, so they'll respond quite well to any weather condition changes that come in, tyre dramas, whatever. They'll do quite a good job. And we shouldn't read too much in to what Mercedes do at Monaco, whether they're quick or slow, based on their upgrades. I think because if they go really well, it won't necessarily be because of upgrades. It'll be because they're a very good race team with two very good race drivers. We should wait until Barcelona, I think, to see what really is in store for Mercedes in terms of their upgrades. And as for Lewis, Ferrari, Charles, Mercedes, as I've been saying on these live streams, if Lewis is starting to run out of steam, which I've been kind of predicting he would for, at least a year now, since Abu Dhabi 21, and I think he's done really well not to run out of steam. But if he is, because the car is just not competitive, the only team, as I've said several times, that would in any way give him motivation and get him out of bed in the morning would be Ferrari, because it's just so different to anything he's ever had. And it would be kind of nice for him to drive a Ferrari in a red car, wouldn't it? I'm sure Lewis, being a racer, would go for that. And so I see that happening. If Ferrari, and I see Freddie Vasseur, for whom Lewis used to race in the Formula 3 days, saying, come on, Lewis, yeah, you and I can do it. Yeah, I really believe in you, let's do it. And Charles would take your place at Mercedes. We'll do a swap. I can see that happening, as I said. And I think for Charles, he'd love to be in a Red Bull, but if he can't be in a Red Bull, I think it's better for him to be in a Mercedes than a Ferrari, because he's had so much stuff going on at Ferrari over the years, emotionally, politically, socially, that I think he would love it at Mercedes, which is a much more clinical team from his point of view. And it would be, from Mercedes' point of view, a very good team. I don't think they'd be losing that much if they had Leclerc, Russell, compared with Hamilton, Russell. I think, Charles is that good, and Lewis is that good. I think Ferrari will definitely benefit from having Lewis there, fresh thinking and fresh approach, slightly different ways of operating as well. And I think Carlos Sainz would dovetail really well with Lewis at Ferrari. So I do see that happening. I've seen a few numbers bandied around. I thought one was 40 million. I thought, if I was Lewis Hamilton, I'd be going for a lot more than 40 million, because you could argue Lewis, with the Ferrari brand and what he could do for the Ferrari brand, he should be thinking in terms of at least 50 just for PR and brand turnaround. And then how much is he worth as a driver, as a pure race driver? You'd have to say 30, 25, 30. So I'm 40, I would say about 80 would be more logical. And if they're not going to pay him that sort of money, I don't think he should do it. I think he should stay at Mercedes and look for some long-term deal at Mercedes. and continue, because what you don't want to do if you're Lewis Hamilton is leave Mercedes just as they're going to be competitive, because the odds are, having been uncompetitive for so long, that a team that big and that good will eventually find the way. So that's another issue for Lewis. So he may well stay where he is, and it could be the money that decides it. In my advice, if I was managing Lewis and it was 40 million, I'd say, nah, stay where you are. Ferrari, huge brand for Lewis Hamilton to put his name to, massive, and that's it's a lot more than a £40 million deal, in my view. Okay, Victor Rodriguez. Hi Peter, fan of the show. Do you think Red Bull switching to Ford would be a good idea? I read that this is the only successful American builder against the top European manufacturers. Well, it's a very different Ford now to the one that was in motorsport, doing such a great job in motorsport particularly in the 60s. 70s, 80s, not so much. Well, 90s, yeah. Michael won a championship, didn't he, with a Ford Cossi engine. It's a very different Ford now. That's the first thing you need to say. Secondly, they went electric very early compared with a lot of other car companies, and they would love the image of being in a Formula One, which is 50% electrified from 26 onwards, so that's good. I don't think you'll see a lot of Ford technology in that engine, to be honest. I think most of it is going to be Red Bull, Adrian Newey technology, which is, going to be outstandingly good for sure. A lot of it learnt in conjunction with what they're doing with Honda now, but this will be very much a Red Bull program badged by Ford. There will be some Ford input for sure, and you'll see the odd story and bit of content, Ford doing this, Ford doing that, but ultimately it's going to be a Red Bull power unit. So they badged the engine, and there are plenty of engines out there. A friend of mine, Dave Cooper, really good guy, former fabricator at Ferrari when I was running Ferrari GTO in the UK. Really good fabby. Went to America. He's now a major player at Ligier, who make a number of purpose-built chassis for various categories of racing in America, including a new Formula 4 car going to be announced, I think, pretty soon, maybe even this weekend. Road America, I think. Anyway, they've commissioned a new V4 engine, Formula 4, V4, why not? Great engine, racing engine, and it can be badged. That engine could end up being a Mazda or a Honda or whatever. And that badging thing is a very powerful tool, I think, just as powerful as a title sponsor of a team, if not more so. Think about the TAG Porsche engine. That was just badged by TAG. A lot of people call that the TAG Turbo, don't they? I hope Dave, a plug there for Dave Cooper, really good guy, Ligier America, and I hope he has a really successful run with that. Don't think it's a Ford engine based on their success of the past. Ford's a company with an enormous amount of motor racing road dust, but it will be a Red Bull technology engine, and it'll be very much under the control of Red Bull. That is what I'm saying. The engine has to be so much a part of the race team operation, a bit like Mercedes power units as well, and Ferrari obviously. So Victor, second question says, do you think the Ford engine will be successful as it was in the past? Well, as I say, it's not the same company at all. And for them to have the same, they certainly won't be as successful as the Cosworth DFV, that is for sure, the most successful engine of all time, which was badged by Ford, built by Cosworth, but badged by Ford for the princely sum of, I think it was £50,000. Wow, that was the deal of the century. Thanks to Walter Hayes, former journalist, and then a Ford of Europe, head of Ford of Europe. Turbo GSR, nice, very nice for you to do a top chat question. Thank you very much. Do you think this year's Red Bull Honda could be a repeat of the '88 McLaren Honda? Is the gap that big this year? Yeah, I think it is, and I think we're going back to '88, the MP4 Steve Nichols design car. Neil Oakley already working on the MP4-5, the 89 car in the background. Gordon Murray, director of engineering at McLaren, with great days. Honda engines with Ayrton Senna, Alan Prost. And yeah, they had it all, apart from the Italian Grand Prix, which was an amazing race, wasn't it? Because '88, McLaren won everything except Monza. And Enzo Ferrari had passed away just a few days before that Italian Grand Prix. And everybody just thought it'd be another McLaren walkover. And guess what? It was a Ferrari one too. Gerhard Berger, Michele Alboreto. Amazing. Anyway, yeah, I think it will. So I think we should I don't think we should think of it in terms of, oh, this is a boring year because Red Bull are going to win everything. I think we should think of it in terms of, wow, it's a big race between Max and Perez, and Max just doesn't have it all his own way. He can't just relax because Perez will be right there. And Perez could easily win Monaco, as we know. And there'll be plenty of other circuits. Singapore, another good example of a good Perez circuit. I think also, compared with 88, this year is different, this era is different, because we're in a budget cap era. And Red Bull have already got the penalty for winning the championship last year, which means they've got less aero test time, less wind tunnel time, less CFD time, and on top of that, they've got the penalty for exceeding the budget cap last year anyway. So they have to be very careful on how much they can spend. So compared with 88, when McLaren would have just continued to develop that car, as much as they did in those days, not a massive amount, but they did throughout the year, they need to be a bit more careful. And as I say, from about Spa onwards, assuming Red Bull haven't just suddenly collapsed for whatever reason, then I think you'll see them cutting right back on the development of this car, and you'll see an Aston, a Mercedes and a Ferrari getting a bit nearer to Red Bull in the back half of this year as a result of that. The other thing, in the last live stream, I read out, and this is apropos Honda as well, I guess, I read out the missive that Jean-Marie Balestre put out before the Japanese Grand Prix in 88, in which he called Honda to be very fair in their engine allocations between Prost and Senna. It's quite opposite, isn't it, now, when you think about Honda coming back with Aston Martin and you think about what Red Bull... Can you imagine now if Stefano Domenicali publicly put out a statement to Red Bull saying, we trust that you'll be giving equal engines to Max and Sergio Perez going into the last few rounds of the World Championship. But yeah, that's what happened, and that's what got up Senna's nose so much, because he assumed that was Alain that had driven Balestre into doing that. French driver, French president, and that's where it all started, really. I think going into that Japanese Grand Prix. So there we are. I haven't got that much more time, actually. Anyway, I'll just keep going. Okay. Hi, Pete. This is IP. It's from IP. Good name. Hi, Peter. Do you watch the same broadcast as we do? I can't see much difference between drivers in terms of how they approach corners, where they put the load. Can you guide us as to what you're actually seeing? Well, being an FIA permanent media pass holder, I am able to log into different feeds and different coverage, I guess. I don't get to see much more than what goes out on the world feeds anyway, in terms of the right angle to look at a driver and what he's doing, his inputs. I'm still pretty much in the dark as much as you guys, except that when we do get an angle, I really watch it. And I, for me, it's usually, as I said many times, it's the head-on without the camera panning at some corners. Copse, Silverstone being a good example. But I think, you could see it. You could definitely see the difference in load and input and suppleness between, say, Leclerc and Sainz through the quick S's in Miami. I know Leclerc got it wrong, but when he wasn't getting it wrong, you could see what he was. There was much less move, and between Max and Sergio through there as well. That was where Max was really, really good. I know also he lost it there, but he was really good there until he lost it in qualifying as well. But you could see there, just nudging the car less, and just everything was more supple through there. Monaco, as I say, I think it's potentially Sandervoet's not. It's a bit line locked. Sandervoet. I think the top of the hill is where I'm hoping we're going to get some nice shots. We may get some aerial shots there. Can't really tell much into Mirabeau. It's too tight. I think coming into the chicane, high speed braking into the chicane, you'll see a little bit there. Not so much as short corners, but you'll just see who settles the car correctly and who's got the right sort of platform there and who's braking super late. Super late to the point where they've got instability. Tabac is a place where we could potentially see shorter corners from the Leclercs and the Maxes and the Lewises. And dare I say it, the Oscar Piastris, and also into the very fast entry to the pool as well. And also overhead into Rascasse. I'm not sure we get a good overhead shot on TV, but I'm going to go and watch from there tomorrow. So what can I say? Go to the track. Yeah, anyway, thanks for that, IP. But I am lucky enough to see different feeds. So, and I'd never have ad breaks or any of that stuff. And I don't have any commentary. I just have the sound of the radio and the engine noise. So that's really good too. Cameron F1. Hello, Cameron, mate. How are you? Hope you're well, sir. Though I've had the honour of picking your brain on more than one occasion, I've never asked you this. What's your one Formula One memory that stands above all others? Wow, Cameron. Yeah, Cameron's got a great YouTube channel, and a great site as well. I'm a big Cameron fan. What is your? Oh wow! I mean, I can't actually come down to one, mate. If I think of so many parts of my life to do with Formula One, I think I'm incredibly lucky in that my Formula One career has been typified by not really doing the same thing for more than a year. It's always changed. My perspectives have changed. My jobs have changed, and how I think about Formula One has changed. I've never been in a rut. I've never been forced to be in a rut. So I've got about 35 different windows through which I can look at for memories. So I can't really, I've got very sad memories. Gilles, very good example. Tom Price, another. I've got childhood memories, watching Jim Clark in a red, white and gold Lotus 49 at Warwick Farm, drifting the car, just drifting it all of a piece without any jolt at all. It just looked as if the car was just on a perfectly smooth piece of string, but everything was sliding. It was just incredible to watch. I've got memories of Carlos Reutemann and how he'd talk about crushing the sidewall of the Michelin on that qualifying lap when he got the pole at Monaco in '78, and what that felt like, and how he could see the exit of the corner before he'd even turned in mentally. I've got memories of Nigel and being with Nigel for 10, 12 years, the highs and lows, the very low moments, the incredibly high peaks when he was given an opportunity to prove his ability, and he lived up to it, and the great drives that he put in uncompetitive cars. Sharing all those moments with Nigel was incredibly emotional. Team manager at Williams, winning the championship. When we clinched the championship was a huge thing. And then after that, a lot of stuff to do with TV and to do with friends in the sport and helping them if I could and to prove their ability. I don't know. What can I say? If I had to choose one moment, I suppose it would be sitting down with Jim Clark in March 1968 at Sydney Airport and saying to Jimmy, Mr. Clark, I've been a fan of yours for as long as I can remember, and I want to thank you for everything you've done in Formula One, and I've got a couple of questions. Do you mind if I ask them? Yeah, go ahead. So why did you wear a dark blue peak on your helmet in the '64 Dutch Grand Prix? Oh, I can't remember. What a question. And so it went on. Yeah, I think meeting Jim Clark and chatting to Jimmy for about 20 minutes and having Jim Clark say to me, if you really want to make a living in motorsport and you really want to have a life in motorsport, you can do it. Just never give up. Always go for it. And I did. And that's always been my mantra. And I always think of Jimmy, I don't know how many times a day, 30, 40 probably. Another question coming in from Elliot Davidson. Thank you very much. Coloured question, I'm going to call it. Hi, Peter. Amazing content. Please, could you explain the difference in relationship between square corner and a short corner? Yeah, well, I haven't got much time, Elliot, but I'll do my best. A square, I wouldn't call it a square corner. I would call it a corner with a conventional, mathematical, geometric apex. So any corner has, apart from S's obviously, but even within an S, you can find one section of road. If you extend the straights between the corner, whatever they are, and then you bisect the angle of those two straight lines, there is your geometrical apex. And that is the apex that many drivers have a natural feel for hitting, if you like. And they start on the outside of the corner looking at the geometrical apex, and they try to take the shortest possible line from the outside to the exit outside, clipping that geometrical apex. Now, and a lot of drivers do that incredibly well. Jenson Button, very good example. Great Grand Prix driver, geometrical apex driver for sure. Ayrton Senna, pretty much geometrical apex. But many drivers, many of them great drivers, have all shortened the corner by having what Jim Clark described as a false apex, which is an apex that is generated by the driver's feel for the correct moment to rotate the car with the least possible downside. It's a bit of a mouthful, but rotating the car, in other words, the substance of the corner, when you have at some point to turn the car, is the moment that is unavoidable and has the most downside to it, because you've got tire scrub, you've got to do it at the speed that will allow the car to rotate. It's a boring, nasty part of the corner, if you like. And the great drivers break and set up a stable platform for that moment as distinct from the geometrical apex. And they do that because they want to try to get into the corner a bit earlier, to shorten the corner, actually less road to be covered, the road less traveled. And that moment of rotation is then different from lap to lap, from corner to corner. It's entirely due to their feel for getting in early, feeling what the car's about to do, and then with very, very supple adjustments, rotating the car with the least possible downside. And they need to be very patient for that, because it can all be blown by just getting on the power too soon or giving the steering too much aggression if you've got understeer, whatever it is. And it's all anticipating those things. And if you do it correctly, as the great drivers do, Max, very good example right now in Formula One, it allows you to have shorter corners and to manage the tires more. You're not loading the tires as much. When you get to a geometrical apex and you're looking to feed on the power, that's when you start to use the tires quite a lot. And you've got to be very good at manipulating the front of the car and have feel for the front of the car. Very difficult thing. It's a natural thing. It's not a thing you can really teach. And Jim Clark did that. Stirling Moss did that. I suspect Ascari, Nuvolari, Vazzi did that. Mario for sure did that. Carlos Reutemann did that. Nigel Mansell did that. Alan Prost did that. And as I say, right now, Max, Lewis and Charles do that in spades. Somebody was saying, a journalist not so long ago said that Lewis isn't a short corner driver. Well, I mean, every corner I've ever seen him drive, apart from the hairpin at Suzuka, is a short corner for Lewis. And so I just don't get that at all. He is absolutely the epitome of the art, in my view. So, yeah, it probably doesn't answer the corner correctly, but it's best summed up by Jim Clark's chapter, The Technique of, I think it's My Technique of Motor Racing, or yeah, something like that, in his autobiography, Jim Clark at the Wheel. And he talks about the false apex and the geometric apex, and why he doesn't know why he does it, but he said, I just have this tendency always to go in for a false early apex. And it's a beautiful thing to watch. It's a really beautiful thing to watch. And not many can do it. So there we are. Karma in Babylon. Message retracted. Okay. Kunal Rao. I hope it's because I've probably dealt with it already. Who knows? Hi, Peter. Do you think Hamilton is deliberately delaying signing a new contract? I'm sure being outperformed by Russell last year would see a decrease in the amount he usually gets paid. No. I think he might be deliberately delaying it purely because he wants to see what the car's going to be like. I don't think he's worried about George or money at this point. He's only concerned about, am I going to be in a competitive car next year? By which I mean a car capable of winning a Grand Prix on any given Sunday and therefore a World Championship. That's what Lewis will be thinking about. And as I say, if he is talking to Freddie Vasseur about potentially going to Ferrari, they will be talking about money for that, for sure, because there is no guarantee that, there's less of a guarantee at Ferrari that he'll have a competitive car, race-winning car, than there is at Mercedes, actually, in my view, because Lewis will be thinking this is a very good team and they will eventually get it right. Whereas Ferrari, wow, big unknown there. So if he's going to Ferrari or thinking about Ferrari, he will be thinking about money for that one. I hope he is anyway, because I say he deserves a lot more than 40 if he's going to go there. Equally, I think if he's thinking about staying at Mercedes, he will be delaying it because he just wants to know what the new cars, what the new upgrades are going to be like, for sure. Nick Faber, hey man, appreciate you doing this. Oh, thank you very much, Nick. Yeah, sweating a bit now, 1 o'clock. Yeah, I've got about another 10 minutes, I guess, 10 to 1. Rao, I remember seeing you in the Toyota hospitality in the early 2000s. Hi, Rao. Yeah, hi. Yeah, Toyota, loved the Toyota. I always used to use the Toyota motorhome as my base when I was doing live TV, and Bob Varsha or Steve Matchett had been doing something brilliant, and I knew they'd be talking for 10 minutes. I'd go to Toyota, keep listening to the headset, knowing, I'm going to have a drink here at Toyota. And then I'd hear the Bob say, now we'll go down to Peter, who's in the pit lane. And of course, I wasn't in the pit lane. Oh, yeah, here I am in the pits. Actually, I'm in the Toyota garage, running a Toyota motorhome. But they're very good people at Toyota, John Hart and the boys. And because they let me out in their V10. They let me out in their V10 Formula One car, Ricard. And I did 15 laps at Ricard in that. Loved it. 288 going into Seam. With the chicane behind me, I wasn't messing around. Having said that, it was cold and wet, and I was on slicks initially and then intermediate, so I had a couple of spins. Yeah, I know. Shanky says, which races should we expect Checo to be on the pace with Max? Well, certainly Monaco. Lots of nice traction episodes where he can do his thing. Barcelona, I think Max will be so good sector 1. Sector 2, out of turn 5, Perez will be pretty good. Pretty good if tyre management's an issue. By the way, tyres at Monaco, they're not going to do that qualifying thing that they were going to try to do at Imola, or they were planning to do at Imola, where everybody had to run hards, mediums, and then softs in the 3 elements of qualifying. At Monaco, it's back to normal again. That was something they were going to try at Imola. But they are, if it is wet, they are going to try the new wet Pirellis, which do not require tyre warmers, which can't be heated by tyre warmers. That'll be interesting if it is wet and they run those. That's the blue tyre. So Barcelona, it's a bit more Maxish now. Sector 3 now, they've taken away that dreadful chicane thing they had. So I wouldn't look for too much at Barcelona. I don't know. Hungary might be pretty good for Perez. A few traction episodes there. Anywhere where there's traction, Silverstone will be Max. Spa, Max. Singapore really is the next one, I think, after that. Or am I missing something? Yeah, I think probably Singapore is the next one after Monaco. But it's not to say you won't be near him at the other places. It's not to say Max is going to disappear, and it's, highly possible that Max, having such a good run, may have a lot of odd things going on all the time. So don't write him off. I'm just saying where he will be really good, as you are indeed asking, Shanky. Thanks for that. Promo 130. Hi, Peter. Thanks for making lunch break. Thank you very much. Bayanda Valashia. Vuyani Valashia. Sorry, I should spend more time. Hi, Peter. Vuyani from South Africa. Big fan. Is Red Bull engine be labelled Ford like they did with Infinity, or be a full new engine from Ford? What will happen to Red Bull Powertrain? Red Bull Powertrain will be building the engine, and it'll be badged by Ford. That's what will happen there. There'll be a little bit of input from Ford on the electrics, more than the other side, I would imagine. But it'll be very much a Red Bull Powertrain engine. Rauer, Lewis at 37 out-qualified George 13.9, hardly being outperformed. Yeah, I mean, I don't think Lewis is not worried about George. I don't like seeing it because I think a guy that good, it's not very dignified, is it? But having said that, I think he's handled himself really well, Lewis, as I've said many times here, to the ire of some of my viewers. I think, Lewis, given all the road dust he has and the 7 World Championships and everything else, 8 it should have been, he's done pretty well against that hotshot George Russell. Lance, Alex, hi Peter. Charles is so highly rated. Do you think he's overall better driver than George? I can't help but think George has the stronger mentality and nerve and equal skill. Love your insights. I think, I think George is slightly more, as he is with Lewis, he's just slightly more, he's got slightly more edge to his driving, just a little bit more. Lewis has got softer, rounder transitions compared with George, and George therefore is everything has to be pretty right for George to be as brilliantly quick as he is. But I think if there's some sort of issue with the tyres, whether it be tyres are graining or going off, whatever it is, then you're going to see a Lewis or a Charles with their softer touch being able to have a wider sweet spot of driving. But it'd be very close. I mean, George is super, super quick. And it's a big thing for Charles Leclerc to go to Mercedes if he goes to put himself up against George Russell. You know, if you said to Charles right now, if he was here and you're having dinner, whatever, tonight privately, who would you rather have in the other Merc if you're going to go, George or Lewis? He'd say, oh, Lewis for sure. You know, George is a serious player, but he's got slightly less margin for error, and I think he drives very like Ayrton, actually. Apart from the throttle business, I think he's right on the edge, but, you know, there's no margin really with George. So there's no margin with any of them, except that when something goes slightly wrong, a driver who's a manipulative, softer input driver has got a little bit more of a area with which to play, whereas George doesn't leave much, and he's very quick. So yeah, it'd be a big problem for Charles to beat George at Mercedes. I think I've said that on a live stream. I'd be surprised if he does, actually, because George knows the team, he knows the whole thing. So as good as Charles is, I don't believe he would outperform George. And if they've got a championship-winning car, and it was George and Leclerc, I'd put my money on George in year one. Honda will always be a rival as a former Toyota employee. Yeah, well, you know, they never go away, Honda, do they? How many times have they been in Formula One and then pulled out and then come back and then gone out? In and out, in and out. It depends on who's running the company. We're coming back in now. Jerome Rose, hi Peter, do you think Mercedes with the developments they show in Monaco is going to exceed the budget cap? That's a good point. I doubt it. I think they're pretty organised, but you know, I'm sceptical about the budget cap anyway with these big companies that have other race teams and road cars and all sorts of other development going on. You know, I know it's all forensically accounted for, and I know Red Bull got their knuckles wrapped, but I'm still sceptical, to be honest. I don't think if they did anything like that, I think it would be quite creative and it would probably be completely legal. So I think Mercedes, yeah, I'm sure they're spending quite a lot of their budget cap on it, but I'm not really doing a very good job of answering your question because it's all hypothesis from any of us. None of us would know. But I think to go from where they were to where they need to be will take, I would guess, 90% of their budget cap for this year. I'm not saying that's where they're going to be in Monaco or indeed in Barcelona, but I think that's the amount of work they need to do. That's a lot. Like the video people, Promo 130, black screen, Peter. What's that mean? Hi, Peter. Thank you for all of your great... What does that mean, Promo 130, black screen, Peter? Has the screen gone black? I hope not. It looks to be all right where I am. Seems excellent connection. Current viewers, 630, not bad, considering we didn't give much warning. Hi Peter, thank you for all your great content. I've been wanting to ask you about the differences in relationship between driving square corners and short corners. Thank you. Okay, well, yeah, I didn't do a great job with that, Elliot, but did my best. And we'll talk more endlessly about this, I know, because it is something that people love to talk about. Clinton Danzo, what do you think of the Mercedes upgrade pictures? Haven't seen them yet, so I can't answer them, Clinton. I'm kind of been traveling and doing other stuff, but I'll have a look when I get to Monaco, and we'll do more. I'm doing video, obviously, on Friday, Saturday and Sunday. It'll be a bit scratchy because I'm there rushing around doing a million different things. Turbo GSR says, feel for hitting, not always the fastest. I think so. I agree with that. I had ingrained in my brain apex, 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 apex. When I tried to shorten the corner, I really struggled with it. Yeah. It's what you need to do is do a few laps with Max or Lewis or Charles around Silverstone in some quick car. Go and arrange it. Yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy. I mean, Fernando doesn't really do it. Fernando just does a different thing. I think Fernando's much more geometric apex than, say, Lewis, but he does have a different way of doing it. He does create this incredibly stable platform, but he just does it with the flick of the steering and then waits to see, he sort of waits to see what the car does, then he just balances everything and then he's on it. And that's beautiful to watch as well. But if his corners were a tad shorter, he would be absolute dynamite in qualifying for one lap. He's brilliant in the race, as we know. But I think that's where, in equal cars, that's where Lewis got him in the McLaren periodically. Not every race, I understand that, but that's where Lewis was so good. That's where you could see early on in his form, Lewis had these short corners. They were just there, ingrained in his DNA. Yo Fujishiro says, so basically making the corner without putting a lot of steering lock and reducing tire slip angle, right? Well, it means when you got a shorter corner, you can actually stay on the power a bit longer because all you're doing initially is just turning the steering slightly, and then you're going down into a short corner, so you're using less road. You've got to then manipulate the car to get the rotation, but if you've got the rotation correct, you're then nice and linear on exit. Whereas if you're using a geometrical apex, the only thing you can try and do is brake as late as possible and then turn into the geometrical apex and get on the power as soon as possible. They're the only two things you have with which to play. And if your focus is brake as late as possible, inevitably you're going to brake too late at some point. And as soon as that happens, your survival instinct kicks in, and the following lap you brake a little bit earlier than you need to. And so that's why you see even great drivers like Ronnie Peterson, when great late breakers like Ronnie Peterson, when they eventually brake too late or slight rain, whatever it was, the following lap they would slow down a bit, and then somebody like Peter Revson would come through and beat them and win the 73 British Grand Prix. And so what you never want to be doing in racing is relying on being super late under braking or super early on the power. They're the two things you want to avoid. And that's what a short corner driver never does. He never focuses on either of those two things. So, that's that. But don't ask them about it because they don't know really. They're just doing it because it's completely natural. And I would suggest anybody out there racing at the moment, you can play around with it, but drive to what feels natural for you. You may well be an unbelievable geometric apex driver and do it incredibly well, in which case live with it. Be Denny Hulme, doesn't matter. You can still win a world championship. T3X, I found out recently you were in the car with Sir Frank when he had his crash. Had no idea. Thank you for your videos. Yeah, I was. Yeah, 86, March 86 in that Ford Sierra, Avis Ford Sierra in France, Saturday afternoon. We were leaving the test. The test was still going at Ricard with Nigel and Nelson with the new FW11. And Frank was going back to do a half marathon run the next day. And I'd finished my work with Mobil. I'd had Mobil guests at the track for the last 2 days at the test. And we were both going back, to London, to England, and happened there. So that's another live stream, really. We can talk about it. Elliot David says, amazing, thank you. CB56, as someone who's involved with USF1, how did you react to the FIA going back on their proposal for a cost cap in 2010? Well, actually, I reacted badly when they introduced the cost cap. It was the last thing I wanted, or we wanted, and it ruined everything, really, because it prolonged the time at which we could register with the Concord Agreement, which meant that we couldn't really do anything up until that point because none of our investors wanted to start spending their money until we'd signed the Concord Agreement. And because Bernie and Max came up with this ridiculous budget cap idea in about April 2009, we could have gone straight in, gone to work on the car and done everything correctly, instead of which they just said, oh, well, wait until we sign you into the Concord Agreement. And that was September, I don't know, some ridiculous long delay. And beyond that, they never gave us an opportunity, having taken 6 months out of the life of the team, they never gave it back. They just said, oh, well, you've got to get the car built by next February. And we only started in December or whatever. It was just completely ludicrous. Whereas Haas, for example, even though it was Dallara building the car, at least they had a year or two to get themselves sorted, and we weren't even given that. So I have nothing but bitter memories, if you like, of that whole Bernie Max thing and how they mishandled it all and the mess they made of it. Terrible. And as I said before, you know, if any of us try to do our own Formula One team, we could draw up a list of things that could potentially go wrong if we're going to go down that path and try to do a team. What sort of things would we not get right? I may not raise enough money. I might not get an engine deal. I might have two terrible drivers. The car might be rubbish. You know, you can come up with a number of different things. What I never came up with was, and after we've announced the team, the FIA will suddenly decide to change the rules and tell us that we've got to run Cosworth engines and we've got to run to a budget cap formula that was never going to happen anyway and be delayed 7-8 months before we could do anything. Would I have predicted that? Could anybody have predicted that? No. And all we wanted to do was just, you know, sidle up onto the back of the grid, start walking and then cantering and then galloping over a 4 or 5 year period like everybody else with the new team did, and we were never given the chance. So I feel very aggrieved about that. Unfinished business, to be honest. Darom says Ferrari has had the better car in 2022. I think you mean compared to 23, their 22 car is better. Yeah, that's why I say if Lewis is going to Ferrari, it's such a big unknown in terms of how competitive that car would be that I wouldn't, if I was Lewis, I wouldn't go for less than 80. I did say 100 to a mate the other day, and he said, "Oh, it's a bit much, isn't it?" I said, "Well, okay, let's bring it down to 80." But 40, got to be joking. If he does it for 40, hats off to him, because it means he's just doing it for the love of the sport. I'm not decrying the enormity of 40 million, but I'm just saying for that, he might as well stay at Mercedes, really. Hello, Peter. This is GABZ26GB. Hi, Peter. Thoughts on a Charles victory this weekend? Also on a separate note, any thoughts on the Villeneuve-Peroni documentary? Do you see a bit of Gilles in Charles? I'd love to see a Charles victory. I'd love to see it. He's had so many near misses at Monaco. Will it happen? You know, hard to see it in view of the speed of Red Bull, Aston Martin, Fernando particularly, and potentially a Merc or two. Having said that, Charles is fabulous around Monaco. I just hope, as I said in the other live stream, that Freddie Vasseur is on top of what's going on, and he tells Charles to be patient and to let the weekend come to him and the grip level come to him. I mean, these are very basic things, and I'm sure everybody knows, you know, a street circuit takes a while to rubber in, but, you know, when you're Charles Leclerc, you are out there to prove that you're Charles Leclerc, and I just hope Freddie's on top of him, which he wasn't in Miami quite clearly, and he needs some good management there. I haven't seen the documentary, no. I have my own memories of Gilles and Peroni, and I knew Gilles very, very well. We're very good friends. And do I see a lot of Gilles in Charles? Very different backgrounds, just different backgrounds. But having said that, I think there probably is quite a lot. Gilles was very simple in some ways. Obviously, he trusted Peroni 100%, which was, you know, a lot of his friends, including me, were telling him not to before the whole Imola drama, and he would drive anything anywhere. But I think Charles would too if he's given the opportunity. So yeah, you know, in terms of being very nice people, nice human beings, people that you would enjoy spending time with, they're very similar, very, very similar. Another question from Abby Progressive. Thank you very much for Top Chat. Hi, Peter. Any initial thoughts for the side pod Mercs are brought to Monaco? Pics are surfacing on social media. Some say it's an Aston copy. Well, you know, I haven't seen them. I haven't had time yet. If they are, they're going in the right direction. That's all I can say. I'm sure it really hurts them to copy anybody, but they need to be, you know, getting the diffuser to work, and they need to be getting the beam wing to work, which quite clearly they've not been doing. They've just been going for downforce and downforce and downforce. And if they've got pods now that start to do that and get those two elements performing well, that's how they're going to expand their sweet spot. And let's hope it does that. Let's hope it does that. But as I say, I wouldn't put too much store on what we see at Monaco, because I think even in a relatively bad car with not much downforce or grip, you're going to see George or Lewis somewhere or thereabouts anyway. Nart Stripe Ferrari 458, great name. Does Daniel ever get to return to the grid? I don't know. He decided to leave Red Bull, didn't he, when it was a great team and in a huff because he wasn't able to be Max Verstappen, if that's the right word. And then he went to Renault and McLaren, and he's become a sort of robotic driver that's lost his feel for being Daniel Ricciardo. But I'm sure, if there's an opportunity, even maybe in the AlphaTauri, he might get a run towards the end of the year. Who knows? Okay, that's the end. I think you've lost the picture because the battery's just gone on the camera, but you can probably hear the audio. Sorry about that. And I will be back again over the weekend. Thanks very much to Jetcraft and to Pitbox. See you soon.